Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we are heading to another of the most visited places in Poland, which sadly constitutes the largest extermination center during World War II. And if you like our video, do not forget to like it, subscribe and activate notifications so that you know when we upload a new video. After our day of relaxation in Zakopane, we headed to a place located 70 kilometers from Krakow, the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp, where the systematic extermination of more than 1 million people took place. Access to Auschwitz I and Auschwitz II Birkenau, the two concentration camps of the complex that can be visited, can be done individually or with a guide, but always with prior reservation on the official website. The individual visit is free, although it must be booked well in advance, as there is a very limited number of tickets available. The guided tour does have a cost, and like the individual visit, it also needs to be booked in advance, as it can be conducted in several languages, and there are different schedules for each language. We enter Auschwitz I through the gate where the famous sign is located, which ironically says "Work sets you free," something that made the prisoners think that at some point they would leave the concentration camp alive. The Auschwitz concentration camp complex is made up of 3 main camps: Auschwitz I, Auschwitz II Birkenau, and Auschwitz III Monowitz, of which only the first 2 can be visited. Near these, another 50 subcamps were built, where the productive force of the prisoners was exploited, both in mines and industrial plants, as well as in agricultural farms. We began the visit to the complex at Auschwitz I, built in the mid-1940s on the grounds and buildings of a Polish garrison, and which could accommodate between 12,000 and 20,000 prisoners. In this concentration camp, several blocks can be visited, such as Block 4, where at the entrance we can see the famous expression, "Those who cannot remember their history are condemned to repeat it," and where it shows how, systematically and calculatedly, from June 14, 1940, the transfer of prisoners to this concentration camp took place from cities, ghettos and prisons, from all countries occupied by Nazi Germany, not only Jews but also political prisoners, police prisoners, the so-called asocials like gypsies, Jehovah's Witnesses and homosexuals. Another block that can be visited is Block 5, where material evidence of the crimes committed in the concentration camp is displayed. Here, not only was there direct extermination in gas chambers, but prisoners could also die from hunger, overwork, diseases, punishments, torture, and medical experiments. Additionally, all the belongings they carried in their luggage upon entering the concentration camp were confiscated, with these items being seized in large quantities, as can be seen in the showcases displaying some of them, such as around 110,000 shoes, 3,800 suitcases, 12,000 pots or about 450 prostheses. Another block that can be visited is Block 7, where the living conditions and sanitary conditions of the prisoners interned in the camp are shown, crammed into the different blocks, where they lived in deplorable hygienic conditions. Upon their arrival at the camp, after being disinfected and shaved, they were tattooed with an identification number on their left forearm and given a single tattered uniform, which they wore during the day for work and at night for sleep, and which normally ended up infested with lice. Another block that can be visited is Block 11, in whose basement the first mass extermination test with Zyklon B was carried out, with almost 900 Russian and Polish prisoners locked in their cells, a test that served to confirm the effectiveness of Zyklon B as a method of extermination in gas chambers. Block 11 was known as the Death Block, where the SS confined prisoners suspected of collaborating with the resistance, attempting to escape or maintaining contact with the outside world, being cruelly punished and tortured, many of them to death. Between blocks 10 and 11, in a courtyard, there is the so-called Black Wall, where a large number of prisoners were shot before the extermination by gas chambers was perfected. We can visit this site at one end of the camp, where the crematorium ovens are also located. A bus takes us to Auschwitz II Birkenau, located about 3 kilometers from the first camp, and which was built in the autumn of 1941, after demolishing the houses of the village that occupied the area. This is the largest concentration camp within the Auschwitz complex, with a capacity for 90,000 prisoners, and where the largest mass extermination facilities were built. Just like Auschwitz I, the barracks where the prisoners lived in totally unsanitary conditions, with barely any ventilation and insulation, can be visited. Up to 6 people slept cramped in each bunk of the 36 wooden bunks in the barracks, easily spreading lice or infectious diseases like dysentery, a disease to which most of the prisoners succumbed. The prisoners arrived at the camp by train, passing through the so-called Gate of Hell, crammed into cattle cars, in conditions such that many of them died before reaching the camp. These trains stopped at the so-called Ramp of the Dead, where the prisoners who had managed to survive the journey got off the trains, having all their belongings confiscated. On the platform, the SS doctors awaited, proceeding with the selection of the prisoners, deciding in just a few seconds who would become a slave and who would die immediately. Mechanically, the prisoners were asked their age, profession, and if they were in good health, something ironic given the conditions of the transport, and depending on the answers, the doctor would issue his verdict. If the thumb pointed to one side, they were fit for work. If it pointed to the other side, it meant immediate execution. Those declared fit for work were taken to an area known as the sauna, where they were shaved, disinfected, stripped of their clothes and valuables, and tattooed with a number. They then moved to the quarantine area, where they immediately and brutally came into contact with the camp's operations. The clothes and belongings confiscated from the prisoners upon their arrival were transferred to an area called Canada, where they were sorted and sent to Germany. During the selection process, children, the elderly, mothers with small children, pregnant women, and all individuals considered weak and sickly were automatically classified as unfit for forced labor, starting to walk the path that would lead them to the gas chambers, where they would soon be killed. The gas chambers were destroyed at the end of 1944 due to the proximity of the Red Army, with the intention of erasing the traces of their crimes, as well as documents and other buildings of the camp. The prisoners capable of walking were evacuated in January 1945, transported on foot in the so-called death marches, many of whom did not survive, and upon the arrival of the Red Army on January 27, 1945, 7,500 prisoners were liberated, putting an end to the hatred and barbarity of this place, where more than 1 million people were cruelly and systematically murdered.